We're going to go over some questions from the 4-1 homework. This is in the pre-calculus textbook. We want to convert to degrees and then round to 2 decimal places. Now, if you know, you can use a proportion. We can use pi over 180 equals radians over degrees. Pi over 180 equals what's given? Is it given in radians or degrees? So that goes on top where the radians would be. And you put a d down for degrees. Cross multiplying pi times d equals 180 pi over 13 when you multiply this way. If you divide by pi, you'll get 180 divided by 13. And I need to know what that is as a decimal. 13.846. So if you're rounding it to 2 decimal places, that 6 is going to round it up. So the answer now is going to be what? 13.85. Now, instead of using this proportion, what was my original? Was it pi over 13? Some people are aware that pi radians is equivalent to 180 degrees. And you could have just divided that way also. Now, on this one, it's negative 4.8. There's no pi to replace. Since there's no pi to replace, I really don't have a choice. I have to use my proportion. Pi over 180 equals radians over degrees. You always keep your pi over 180. What's given? Radians or degrees? Radians, so it goes on top like the radians are. And a d for degrees. Cross multiply pi times d equals, I don't know what negative 4.8 times 180 is. But I know to get d, I need to divide that by pi. So I'm going to multiply negative 4.8 times 180, and I'm going to divide it by approximately 3.14159. When you divide, you get negative 275.019. Again, if I'm rounding it to 3 decimal places, that 9 is going to round it up. So the answer is going to be negative 275.02 degrees. Make sure you use a degree symbol. If you don't put a degree symbol, I have to assume you mean radians. So if it is degrees, please indicate that it's degrees. Okay, we were also asked 47. We want to sketch and name the quadrant that the terminal side lies in. So if you bear with me, I'll make some sort of a circle and an axis. We do know the following. We know that this is 0, this is pi over 2, this is pi, this is 1.5 pi, and when you get all the way around, it becomes 2 pi. Pi over 6 is 30 degrees. Pi over 4 is 45 degrees. Pi over 3 is 60 degrees. Now we have that equivalent in each one. If I'm going positive, I go counterclockwise. This happens to be a negative. How many times does 4 go into 5? Does it go in 1 with 1 left over? So if I start with my initial side here like I'm supposed to, let me get a better color. Let's use this. I don't like that one either. Okay, if my initial side is here, because it's negative, I have to go clockwise, so I'm going to go this direction. If I go this way, that's also negative pi, isn't it? And then I want to go 1/4. So that's negative 1 1/4, and its terminal side lies in quadrant 2. Does everybody know their quadrants 1 through 4? Now you have to show the direction that it goes. Otherwise, you might be talking about this angle, which would not be correct. Yeah, the quadrants would be, this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, and that's where the terminal side lied. Down here is quadrant 3, and this is quadrant 4. Usually you indicate quadrants with Roman numerals. Okay, I think there's one or two more. Same thing, 16 pi over 3. How many times does 3 go into 16? 5 with how many left over? 5 1/3. Remember, this is 0, this is pi. Then you get back over here, it's 2 pi, and then over here is 3 pi. In other words, the even pi's are the right side of the x-axis, the odd pi's are on the left. Here's your initial side, right? I want to go positive, so I'm going to go counterclockwise. Please, please watch. You have to show your spiral, or I won't understand it. 1 pi. 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi. So 5 pi would be over here. It'd be sort of a straight angle because it would be exactly opposite of the initial side. But I would count by pi's. Okay, let's see if any more were asked. How about this one? Coterminal angles. I will ask for 2 coterminal angles, one positive and one negative. To find coterminal angles, you either add or subtract 360 degrees. So if I was to add 360 degrees, I would have a negative 765 plus 360, and that's going to give me a negative 405. That is a coterminal angle. Is it positive or is it negative? Negative. What if I added another 360 degrees? So if I add another 360, I end up with a negative 45 degrees. That is another coterminal angle. Is it positive or negative? Negative. So let's keep going. Let's add another 360 degrees. And I think that's 315, right? So that gives me 315 degrees. Now that one, is it positive or negative? Positive. That one is now positive. So my question is, do I have one positive and one negative coterminal angle? Because that's what I will ask. Sometimes you have to add or subtract more than one revolution. Suppose it was not in degrees. Suppose you had it in radians, like 7 pi over 6. Do you know the difference between degrees and radians? 360 degrees is the same as 2 pi radians, right? So instead of adding and subtracting 260, you're going to add and subtract 2 pi. Now, what is 2 pi in sixths? It would be what? 12 sixths. And if you added those, you'd get 19 6 pi. That's a positive, correct? Suppose you did this and you subtracted 2 pi. What would be the negative one? Would it be negative 5 6 pi? So the only difference is if it's radians, you use adding and subtracting 2 pi instead of adding and subtracting 360 degrees. It gets a little harder because sometimes you have to deal with the fractions.